بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحبه الأخيار المنتجبين وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، يقول الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. God says in Quran chapter 2 verses 31 and 32, and he, God, taught Adam all the names. Then he presented them to the angels and said, tell me the names of these, if what you say is true. They replied, glory be to you. We have no knowledge except what you have taught us. You are truly the all-knowing, all-wise. From these couple verses, we understand that there is something special about man. There is something special about human beings. And that special thing is that they were given a special type of knowledge that even angels didn't have. Even angels didn't have the capacity to know and to acquire. And so, by this merit, the angels were not able to be the Khalifa of God on earth, the representative authority of God on earth. It was humans. It was by this merit of that knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. So that knowledge is what made us what? The successive authority of God on earth. Special creation we are. So the more we know, not just the more, not the quantity, the better we know, the better quality of knowledge that we acquire, then the better off we are in this world and in the hereafter. It means we are actually positioning ourselves well when we acquire knowledge, when we learn. Okay? Not just quantity, not just filling our minds with information, but actually quality of knowledge. There is a narration attributed to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that he said, أفضلكم إيمانا أفضلكم معرفة. The best of you in faith, the best of you in iman, the best of you in iman, in faith, in belief, is the best of you in knowledge, in recognition. Now, this iman, this faith that we have, it is really something that directs and steers our relationships. So now if I say, okay, what kind of relationships we have in our lives? We can classify them into two. Our relationship with God and our relationship with the people around us, the environment around us, everything surrounding us other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's say the people, the society, the community. So the iman, which is that thing that brought you to the mosque today. Why are you here today? Because you are mu'min. Because you have this faith in your heart. That faith tells you that in your relationship with God, you need to show absolute submission to His will. You need to show and display absolute need for God. That you need God in every single thing in your life, small and big. This iman and this level of submission required, it actually requires a deep knowledge about God. A certain recognition that you feel in your heart, that you live, that God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is kind, is merciful, is great. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is powerful, capable. This faith, in order for it to be strong and strengthened, you need to learn about God. You need to reflect about God. You need to learn and reflect about all these attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that manifest themselves in the creation around us. So this is one level of relationship that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet said, what? أفضلكم إيمانا أفضلكم معرفة. The best of you in faith are the best of you in recognition and knowledge. So to be closer to God, you need to have a greater and stronger knowledge of Allah, recognition about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for the relationship with God, or with the people, sorry, what does Iman tell you? What does the faith tell you here? Our Iman tells us to move according to our principles. Your Iman tells you, your faith, your belief tells you that look, in your relationship with people, you don't make any single move except that you know it pleases God. You don't say or utter any word except that you know it actually aligns with justice and truth. Otherwise, you don't say it. There are certain principles that you have to align with in the way you behave with people, in the way you speak with people, or the society around you. Obviously, life is complex. Life around us, brothers and sisters, is not very simple. Life is complex. There's many complications in our relationships, in our lives, in our work, and where we live, how we interact. There's many complexities. It's a complex network of things or challenges that we have to go through. And it's not easy or that easy to navigate. So if someone has superficial knowledge about the surrounding, only superficial, okay, that does not really help you in identifying how you behave with the surrounding around you. You wake up in the morning, you go outside, and you have no idea what's going on outside. Okay? Do you think you'll be successful? Do you think you'll do well in life? No. You need to have a certain knowledge, not a shallow knowledge about what's going on around you, about the circumstances, political circumstances, economical, social. If you have a naive, a shallow knowledge, what ends up is that you might be reacting wrongly, impulsively sometimes. Thinking that you're doing the right thing, but you're actually not. Thinking that you're pleasing God, but you're actually not. And thinking that actually you're benefiting yourself spiritually, materially, you're doing the right thing, but you're actually not. So when we say, we need to be, or to acquire knowledge, to acquire recognition, obviously there's two things here. One is that we need to learn about our religious knowledge. Okay? So we need to learn about the faith. What are the beliefs we believe in? What are the ahkam? What are the rulings? How we should live? What are the moral standards that we should hold ourselves against? We should learn that. And this is what you do when you come to the center. This is what you do when you open a book and you start reading and understanding. You try to understand your faith, your belief, the religious knowledge. And obviously it's important here to remember that there's different approaches, different methodologies where one can approach religious knowledge. And this is why you see difference in opinions. Yeah? This scholar, for example, thinks this way. That scholar thinks that way. That's something we need to understand and appreciate. And this is what creates difference. So we shouldn't allow these differences to what? Make us fight each other. To convert that difference into conflict. No, understand, appreciate that there are different ways that people maybe understand the Quran, that people maybe approach the narrations. And this naturally results in different understanding of some religious concepts. So religious knowledge is important. Okay, so now we're talking about how to better our faith. How to better our implementation of our faith. You first need to learn your iman. You need to learn your deen. That's what we're doing. The second, what is the second? What was I talking about? That this knowledge is not sufficient if you don't know about your surrounding. If you don't know about what is happening in reality around you in the world, or in your community, or in your society. So, you need to learn about your surrounding. We need to learn about what is happening around us and how it influences us. Yes, things that are happening in the Far East, things that are happening in the Far West, these can influence us and our children here, today, and here, in this location. Especially in the way that the world is operating today. You can't say that, let them deal with that problem. It will never touch me or reach me. No, that's not how it is anymore. If it was like that in the past, assuming. So we need to learn about what is happening around us. Why is that? Someone might ask, okay, why? Why is that important for my iman? Isn't it important? Isn't it sufficient for my iman, for me to be mu'min, to be a believer, to be a person of faith, just to recite Quran, to pray, yes, to recite some supplications to God, to be nice, to be kind? Isn't that sufficient? Isn't that enough? The issue here is that without the challenges in life, outside your room, outside your mihrab, outside your room of worship, without having to go and experience that friction in the society and the community, you're not applying anything of what you're learning from your faith. The world outside is where you apply what you learn. And that's why it's important. You need to gain the experience to learn how to apply the iman, how to apply the faith. I'll give you examples. We learn spending from your wealth is important. Being generous, giving away, important. Okay, does that mean that, anyone who knocks on your door tells you, give me your money, you give the money? Isn't that a shallow way of understanding it? If someone that if you give money to, they will go and spend them in the wrong, in the impermissible. Is it wise that you give them the money? Well, no, I want to be generous. My faith tells me to give away and to be generous. Well, this is a superficial way of understanding your faith. For example, forgiveness. I want to be someone who is forgiving. Okay. Someone who's done this injustice, who's stolen something. Well, I forgive. Well, okay, fine, good. But what about the rights of the people? What about the rights of the community? How do you protect your society? There's a public right. What do you do there? So there are things that we know how to apply in the right place, at the right time, in the right way. That's why it's important to learn about what's going on around you. Not to be blinded, not to be naive. Say, well, this is, my faith is in salat. My faith, my iman is in prayers and in secluding myself. And there's been so many people, so many communities maybe who've done so many mistakes in this sense. Thinking that they're doing the right thing when it comes to applying what they learned. But they've actually did the very wrong thing. Some people in history we know about, they took iman and faith as a set of rituals. A set of rituals. And they misunderstood completely. It's about salat. You've heard some narrations that those people, maybe at the time of the Prophet or some imams, they would go and seclude themselves from the community, from the society, thinking, this is the way I'm becoming a good person, this is how I'm securing myself, my faith, my afterlife. I want to be someone who's devoted to God. And the Prophet rebuked them, and the imams rebuked them. That's not how you do it. In fact, displaying patience for one day in a community, in a society, is much better than days or years of worship. Because then you're putting your faith under test. You're applying what you've learned. Groups in history. Khawarij, those people who revolted against Imam Ali alayhi salam. What banners did they lift? Quran. The way they would recite the Quran at night, like the buzzing of the bees. Worship. Someone would look at them and would say, Wallahi, mashallah, that's so much devotion, I wish I'm like that. Saying the Quran, La hukma illa lillah, reciting a verse from the Quran, there's no rulership except by God. And they revolted against Ali alayhi salam, saying, no, the rulership is for God, not for you. And Imam alayhi salam rebuked them. What is this understanding? They failed the test. Or those people who, basically what happened is that they fell prey to the plottings of Muawiyah. And it worked on them. They were pious, religious, reciting Quran, reciting Salat, fasting, all that. But they ended up missing the direction. And they went the wrong way. Why is that? Did they not learn the Quran? Well, they learned the Quran. Did they not learn Salat? Well, they learned Salat. But they didn't know, or they failed applying this iman, or this belief, or this intellectual information they've learned. They failed to apply them in reality. And shaitan works this way. Shaitan, my brothers and sisters, what he does is that he doesn't have power over you, obviously. He doesn't bring your hand and tell you, okay, come and eat this haram. Come and do that injustice. He doesn't do that. Shaitan presents things to you in a way that is appealing. Tazyeen, we call it. Zayyana lahum ash-shaytan. Shaitan, as Allah says in the Quran, made things look appealing to them, shiny. What shaitan does is it wraps the batil, the falsehood, the injustice, the wrong with the wrapping, with the packaging of what? Of righteousness, justice. And so if I am a naive person, if I'm someone who doesn't have deep knowledge, I would fall victim of what? Of these appearances. But if I'm someone who has deep knowledge of things, experienced in life, experienced in how to apply whatever I learn about deen onto real life, I'm able to expose what is right and what is wrong. I'm able to know that this is, for example, kalimatu haqqin yuradu biha batil, like Amir al-Mu'mineen said. This is a word of truth, but what is desired behind it is falsehood. That is something that we need to keep in mind, especially in this modern day and age. Things that are happening around us, always remember that. Sometimes things are made appealing to you. Freedom of a people. Freedom, values, justice. Beautiful. We are the people who advocate freedom. We are the people whose faith advocates justice, obviously. But is that really what it is? Or is it something that is packaged with these words? That's where knowledge helps us. This is where we go to the narration from Rasulullah that he said, أَفْضَلُكُمْ إِيمَانًا. What? أَفْضَلُكُمْ مَعْرِفَةً. The best of you in faith, really, is the best of you in knowledge. Those of you who are aware. There's a hadith that says, الْعَارِفُ بِزَمَانِهِ لَا تَهْجِمُ عَلَيْهِ اللَّوَابِسِ. The one who knows about his age, her time, circumstances, then nothing would actually stand against you to shake you. You would know what your responsibility is. Why? Because you're someone who's able to apply the principles of your deen onto the real life challenges. And obviously our faith teaches us to base our judgments and to base our iman and to base our behaviors on evidence. On evidence. Yes? You need to have strong foundations so that nothing would shake you. So you don't believe anything unless you know there is strong evidence for it. And you won't deny something completely unless you know the evidence tells you this should be denied. If you're someone who follows good foundations, then your faith is strong. A faith that is based on superstition, a faith that is based on exaggeration, a faith that is based on what is popular or what we've inherited from our forefathers, our communities, that faith is flaky, brothers and sisters. Flaky. It can shake at the nearest challenge. And so, we need to be a community that does not fear criticism. A community that actually goes and seeks knowledge, seeks evidence for the knowledge, for whatever we believe in, and therefore we don't fear any criticism. Because we are after the truth. You're after the truth. If you're proven wrong, you have no problem admitting, I'm wrong. And therefore, you follow what is right. I'll finish with the narration attributed to Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That he said, أفضل الأعمال العلم بالله. إن العلم ينفعك معه قليل العمل وكثيره. وإن الجهل لا ينفعك معه قليل العمل ولا كثيره. The best of deeds is knowledge about God. This is what we should all strive to gain, more knowledge about God. With knowledge, little or much work benefits you. The little work benefits, the much work benefits. But with ignorance, no little work nor much work benefits you. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين صل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة أجمعين صل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله والورع عن محارمه. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, the servants of God, I enjoin myself, remind myself and yourselves to observe taqwa, to be mindful of God all the time and to stay away from what God has prohibited. Only a couple of minutes to reflect on also recent events that have been taking place in the world. Obviously, as I said, it is important for us to keep an eye on events that are happening in the world around us, even if they were in places that are far away. but actually in some way they influence our community. So any events or any, let's say, events in the world that we think actually influences us in here or influences our brothers and sisters in faith, these are things that we need to pay special attention to. Obviously, we have all been hearing news that have been coming from Syria, and the fall of the Bashar al-Assad, or the president or the regime of Syria. And obviously, clearly after that happened, the country is entering into a very, very dark tunnel. Some people are thinking that what happened is good, and that is freedom, and that is justice, right? Obviously, I'm not denying that there were issues in the previous regimes. But one thing we need to remember always, because sometimes we have very short memory. We have a very short memory. We forget what happened in Iraq, for example. We forget what happened in Libya recently. Hasn't been, a century ago. It's merely a decade ago or a few years back. In different other countries where people thought that, look, with the fall of these oppressive regimes, now there is freedom, now there is prosperity. But actually, what ended up happening is the complete opposite. So we need to be very vigilant. We need to be aware that sometimes when there is something that is presented to us as freedom, justice, good, prosperity, look at what this is packaging. Look at what is coming or what is included inside. What is going to happen now in that country soon? Who's going to govern? Is government really going to be given to the people? Or is it some other powers that are going to maybe fight themselves in order to gain the power or rulership of that country? That's something that we need to think about. What kind of projects are being proposed for that country? How are we in the UK involved? Is our government involved? Is it not? These are questions that we need to ask. We shouldn't really fall prey to propaganda here and there. We need to think in the wider picture. Obviously, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all our brothers, all our sisters in Syria and in other countries, that inshallah they may have prosperity, that they themselves may decide their own future. Inshallah, we pray that it would be given to them. But obviously, before something like this happens, we need to make sure, or the people there need to make sure that they have a plan for what is coming next. Otherwise, there's so many countries, East and West, that are examples now for us to show us that, well, that might not be a good future that is awaiting. Inshallah, it's all in the hands of God. The second point I want to focus on is that after the fitna, the split amongst the Muslims, after this has been buried for over a year with the things that have been happening in Gaza, and we've seen unity of Muslims, not just Muslims, people from outside Islam, people from outside any faith even. They were united on what was happening in Gaza. Now we see in Syria or in different places, people trying to awaken this fitna. People trying to start with this hate speech. Sunni, Shia, right? Non-Sunni, non-Shia. Let's kill this, let's kill that. We need to be aware of this. And we need to not participate in that, brothers and sisters. What has been displayed for over a year about the issue in Gaza and Palestine, that was a beautiful episode in humanity. We should stick to it. We shouldn't really compromise that. We shouldn't really go to that slippery slope that those people, the haters of freedom and justice and truth, that they are trying to plot. Inshallah, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He may help us acquire true and deep knowledge about our faith and about events that are surrounding us. I say this and I ask God to forgive me and forgive yourselves. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد